The Littlest Rebel is certainly a thought-provoking film. In some ways, it's a very good, powerful film. In other ways, it's really uncomfortable to watch, and I will explain why that is. There's one moment in particular, though, that I was not expecting, and I guess it's maybe a small spoiler, so I'll discuss it at the very end with a spoiler warning, but there was one moment in particular that I could have gone my whole life without seeing because it was just really uncomfortable. The film was released in 1935. It's directed by David Butler. It's written by Edwin J. Burke and Harry Tugend, or Tugend, I apologise if I've mispronounced that. And it's based on the 1909 play by Edward Peple. And we have a cast including Shirley Temple, John Boles, Jack Holt, Karen Morley, and various others. We also have Bill Robinson as Uncle Billy, who is one of my favourite characters in this. And I guess my other favourite character is Virgie, played by Shirley Temple. And this is set during the Civil War. So there are two things to remember here. It's set during the Civil War, so it's depicting attitudes at the time, but it was also released in 1935, a time when Hollywood maybe wasn't as PC as it is today. So we have kind of two things working against it for a contemporary audience today. And that does mean that it's quite uncomfortable. It is dealing with the Civil War. Young Virgie's father has to report for duty, and there are a lot of quite intense scenes that follow from that point as we see the time period being depicted generally from Virgie's perspective. And it's somehow quite light at times, but also mostly quite dramatic, and generally, as I said, quite an uncomfortable watch. In some ways, that's not a criticism, because it is highlighting some really unacceptable attitudes that some people have, of course. But there are also things in this where I'm not 100% sure that they were doing it to highlight the awkward attitudes and that they were actually doing it because it was fine then and maybe they think it's okay today. By today, I mean 1935. I'm not entirely sure, but it's depicting a time period where a lot of attitudes towards black black individuals were not great, of course. And then also in 1935, they didn't necessarily shy away from portraying these depictions. So it's just not a great watch in that regard. With regards to the narrative itself, it's well handled, it's believable, the characters are well written, the performances are very good. Visually, it's good. We have some really nice costumes, the environment looks quite good. So there are aspects of it that I think are very, very well done. But that doesn't mean that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed bits of it. I didn't enjoy other bits. And as I said, at some point, or at certain points in the film, it does feel like they are accurate, awkward encounters between characters. And it gets praised for that accuracy because by making the viewer uncomfortable, it's highlighting that these views are uncomfortable and unacceptable. But as I said, there are times when I'm not 100% sure that's what their mission was. I could be wrong, I could be misreading it, but there are times when I don't think they were depicting certain attitudes to help the viewer understand that you feel uncomfortable because this is not acceptable. There were times when I think they were doing it for cheap laughs, and it's not great in that regard. But visually, it is amazing. The costumes are great, the colour palette's great, the locations are satisfying. It's easy to feel like I was there. I don't know exactly how historically accurate it is, but it felt believable. I felt like I'd been transported back in time. So as I said, in some ways, it is a really solid, impressive film. In other ways, in 2026, it's not a good experience. I think it's an educational experience. I think we could learn a lot from this. I think there's a lot that we could analyse if you enjoy watching films, to analyse them and pick them apart and do a deep dive into the film, the context. There's a lot there. This is a really great contender for that. But to just watch the film for the enjoyment, it's difficult to know whether I recommend it or not. I guess if you're curious, watch it. It's not a comfortable watch, but in some ways it's an impressive film. The Littlest Rebel is very interesting. And I will now mention the one moment that it genuinely took me by surprise. So this is, I guess, a spoiler for something that happens. It doesn't really spoil the overarching narrative, but it is a key aspect of the film. And this is, of course, the moment where Shirley Temple is blackface. And I really could have gone my whole life without seeing that, because I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think it's the first time I've seen a child in a film donning blackface. I could be wrong, I could be mistaken. But also, certainly, Shirley Temple, she plays these very sweet, adorable characters. and then to see her with blackface is just... it's not great. I'm certainly not blaming Shirley Temple for this. She was a young child. I'm fully sure that she had no idea really what it meant at that age, but it wasn't great. And I'm actually surprised I hadn't seen that before, or even photos of that before. That being said, well, I was going to say that being said, I might have done and I didn't remember, but I feel like that image will be etched in my brain for a very long time, so chances are I hadn't seen it before. And yeah, plenty of characters historically have blackface, and it's not great, but the shock value is not really there. But when we have this young, adorable, sweet little girl, it was not necessary, and I don't think it added anything. Again, maybe from an analytical perspective it did. From a context perspective, a historical context perspective, it could have done. But I think they did it for the sake of entertainment, and it wasn't very good. Do I recommend The Littlest Rebel? Yes, if you're interested in the history. Yes, if you're looking for something to analyse, something that will make you think a lot. Not necessarily because it's the most intense, twisty-turny narrative, but because there is a lot there to deal with, a lot there to take in. If you're just looking for a relaxing, enjoyable experience, I'd say... I still have a few Shirley Temple films to watch, but I'd say literally any other Shirley Temple film would be more enjoyable and pleasant than this one. The Littlest Rebel, if nothing else, is definitely a very interesting film.